Stop for a moment. Breathe. When the first breath touches the mind, we are reminded of something seemingly simple, yet often forgotten: ourselves. How long has it been since we truly thought of ourselves, not our work, not our duties, not the expectations of others, but our true selves? The truth is harsh. We've spent far too long trying to please everyone but ourselves. The world outside is noisy and chaotic. It sweeps us away like a storm, forcing us to run to catch up, to avoid being left behind, to feel accepted. But the more we run, the more we become depleted. We begin to lose our sense of direction, our clarity, and most of all, the sovereignty over our own lives. If we don't pause to look inward, who will do it for us? If we don't place ourselves first, we will remain shadows chasing after things that will never be enough. Now is the time to begin a different journey, a journey back to ourselves. 1. Are you a supporting character in your own life? There's a truth many people fail to realize until their body sends out an emergency signal or their mind simply can't take it anymore. We're living as if this life doesn't belong to us. Each day, we wake up and get swept into the cycle of pleasing others, from coworkers and family members to strangers on social media. External validation slowly becomes the yardstick by which we measure our worth. And before we know it, we've become a service version of ourselves, no longer our true self. Gabriel is a clear example of this. He's the kind of person who always says yes, always available when others need him, always willing to shoulder others' burdens, always putting the needs of family and friends above his own. At work, he's the ideal employee; at home, the solid anchor. But in his own life, he's merely a bystander. No time to care for his health, no space to listen to his emotions, and no will left to set boundaries. Day by day, Gabriel wears himself down, unaware he's living in a state of slow burn. It wasn't until a sudden stroke hit that his body finally had to sound the alarm. Stop. That crisis wasn't an end. It was the beginning of a journey toward self-awareness. Gabriel turned to Stoicism, not as an abstract philosophy, but as a lifeline. Through the lens of Stoic thought, he grasped a truth so obvious, yet so often overlooked. If we don't prioritize ourselves, we're merely background characters in someone else's story. Stoicism doesn't tell us to become selfish, to live only for ourselves, or to ignore others. On the contrary, it teaches us to discern between what is within our control and what is not. We cannot control the expectations of others, nor can we make everyone happy. But we can and must control how we allocate our energy, our time, and our attention. If all of that is constantly given away and none reserved for ourselves, we're sacrificing our lives without even realizing it. There's a simple but profound test. When you lay down at the end of a long day, what's left in your mind? A to-do list for others? Exhaustion from carrying the weight of the world? Or joy from having lived true to your values? If the answer always leans toward fatigue, that's a sign you're standing outside the center of your own life. The tragedy is, when we live as supporting characters, we start to believe we're not important enough to rest, not worthy enough to say no, not confident enough to pursue what we truly desire. We settle for less than we deserve and tell ourselves, as long as everyone else is happy. But the truth is, no one can be truly happy when you are burned out. No one benefits when you lose yourself. Stoic philosophy emphasizes that each person is the architect of their own life. Marcus Aurelius, one of Rome's greatest emperors, once wrote, "Love the fate that is yours, for it is the path to freedom." But how can you love your fate if you're not even living your role in it? How can you build a life if you don't realize you're just watching from the sidelines? To become the main character isn't to become arrogant or cut ties with others. It simply means stepping out of the role of constant appeasement and beginning to ask, what truly matters to me? Am I living according to my values? Do the things I do each day take me closer to where I want to go? And if not, why do I keep doing them? Imagine watching a film of your own life. Would you see yourself at the center, choosing, acting, living with intent? Or just a passerby, drifting along the currents of others' plans? The answer may be uncomfortable, but it's necessary, because it marks the first step toward change. Reclaiming your rightful place in your own life doesn't happen overnight. It demands persistence, the courage to say no, and a clear understanding of your limits. But once you begin, you'll discover this: living as the main character isn't just a choice, it's a duty. No one else can live your life for you. No one else can fully grasp the silent fire of your inner longing. And no one else is responsible for what you miss by living someone else's life. That's why putting yourself first isn't selfish. It's the highest form of self-respect. 2. Your mind, the stolen asset you never noticed. In the age of information, we live in a world where attention has become the most valuable commodity. Not oil, not gold, not any other resource, but attention. The power of your full focus, the time you give. Every moment your mind is drawn towards something. Every phone notification, every sensational headline, every captivating short video is designed to seize the most precious part of you, your ability to command your focus. This theft happens quietly but constantly. You feel no pain, bear no physical wounds, yet your mind is being drained bit by bit. And most alarming of all, you don't even realize it. Like erosion in silence, every morning scroll, every unconscious minute on social media, every quick check slowly pulls you away from deep thought, inner peace, and ultimately from yourself. The Stoic philosophers warned of this long before technology existed. Epictetus once said, "If you would be angry when someone takes your body, why so freely surrender your mind?" That question remains piercingly relevant in the digital age. While we lock our doors and protect our bank accounts, our mind, the compass of our entire life, remains wide open to intrusion from every outside force. A typical modern day begins not with standing up, but with unlocking a phone. Before we've even left bed, we're pulled into a torrent of chaotic information. Unread emails, unanswered messages, strangers' status updates, global headlines, all pouring into a still unawakened mind. The space meant for inner silence is overrun by invisible noise, alarmingly effective at manipulating emotion. Anxiety, pressure, envy, fear, they creep in, invade, and occupy our minds hour by hour. The consequence of this invasion goes beyond distraction. It erodes self-governance. When the brain is overloaded with dopamine from short bursts, likes, alerts, bite-sized entertainment, our ability to endure boredom or engage in deep work fades. You want to read a book, but pick up your phone after a few lines. You plan to meditate for 5 minutes, but feel restless after 3. The mind becomes conditioned to chase immediate rewards, and with that, you lose mastery over yourself. Worse still, this mental fragmentation directly damages the quality of your relationships, your work performance, and your capacity to make decisions. When you lack the inner space to hear yourself, you're more easily pulled by others' agendas. When you can't stay focused long enough on a task, you're trapped in a surface-level multitasking mode, never reaching the depth of anything. And when you can't sit still with your own thoughts, it means you've become estranged from your very being. Stoicism offers a deceptively simple yet foundational solution. Reclaim ownership of your mind. And that begins with restoring focus, filtering distractions, and re-establishing boundaries. No one can do this for you. No app or productivity tool can substitute for the choice to direct your attention intentionally. One practical measure is a dopamine detox, temporarily stepping away from high-stimulation inputs like social media, phone notifications, games, or fast consumption content. By turning off alerts, switching your phone to airplane mode during work, or scheduling daily no-tech hours, you send a clear message to your mind: I'm in charge. You don't have to cut everything out completely, but setting limits is non-negotiable if you wish to reclaim your focus. Another simple yet powerful tool is asking the right question at random moments. Each time you're about to open an app, pause and ask, is this serving me or consuming me? That question goes beyond one small decision. It's a way to strengthen your will, which the Stoics saw as the root of personal freedom. When your mind returns under your governance, you'll notice a tangible shift, sharper clarity, steadier resolve, and above all, a sense of peace you thought could only be found elsewhere. But the truth is, it was always within you, just buried beneath layers of noise and distraction. No one can steal your mind unless you leave the door open. But to keep it, you must remain vigilant, draw clear lines, and most importantly, never forget, your mind is not just a part of you, it is you. 3. Time is a non-renewable asset, and how are you spending it? There is one asset we all possess from the moment we're born. No one has more than another, and no one can add to their share. Time. Unlike money, which can be earned back, or health, which may partially recover, time, once passed, never returns. It is the only thing for which every second and every minute is irreversible, non-negotiable, and impossible to sorry. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor and Stoic philosopher, likened time to a river, a ceaseless current carrying away every moment of human life. What has passed cannot be retrieved, and what lies ahead is never guaranteed. For this reason, he emphasized the importance of using time with intention, awareness, and reverence. To waste time is no small matter. It is to waste your very life. In modern reality, the squandering of time no longer appears obvious. We don't idle the day away as in the past. On the contrary, we're often busy. Yet this busyness is sometimes just an illusion. Many spend their days replying to emails, scrolling through dozens of short videos, attending unnecessary meetings, or getting lost in to-do lists that add no true value. At day's end, though exhausted, they can't name anything meaningful they've actually done. Stoicism doesn't oppose being busy, but stresses the difference between being busy and being purposeful. A person may do less than others, but if each action is guided by personal values and long-term goals, their time is being rightly used. Conversely, someone who stays constantly active, pulled by external demands without ever pausing to ask, why am I doing this? That person, despite their motion, is steadily losing time. To address this, one suggested method is to build a clear strategy for using time. You don't have to schedule every minute, but you must identify the 3 most important tasks each day. Those that, if completed, will create real impact in your personal life, career, or inner growth. Narrowing the task list helps eliminate the trivial and focus on what truly matters. A simple but effective technique is the 5-minute rule. Instead of waiting for inspiration or postponing tasks that feel too large, Stoic practitioners are encouraged to just begin, even for 5 minutes. That brief stretch is often enough to overcome inertia, generating momentum for focus and lasting commitment. Action, however small, always outweighs thought without motion. Another frequently mentioned method is the Stoic Pomodoro, a Stoic-leaning version of the traditional Pomodoro technique. Each work session lasts 25 minutes, completely free of interruption. No internet, no messages, no multitasking. Then comes a 5-minute break to reset mental clarity. This cycle not only boosts productivity, but also trains the mind to endure boredom, a crucial spiritual discipline in a world addicted to stimulation. Yet managing time isn't only about planning and action. It demands deep awareness of your limits. You won't always get everything done, and not everything is worth doing. Part of maturity is learning to say no. No to requests, opportunities, or invitations that don't align with your values or long-term vision. Refusal is not selfish. It's how you protect your most precious asset, your time. Time must also be invested in restoration and renewal. Stoicism doesn't glorify relentless work. On the contrary, it values balance between doing and reflecting. Time set aside daily for stillness, self-examination, or simply resting without guilt is a vital element in any strategy for meaningful time management. Ultimately, the most important lesson Stoic philosophers left us is presence. Not just to live, but to be fully alive in each moment. To not let time slip by in a haze. To not chase the past or worry over the future, because the present moment is the only thing we ever truly possess. Time gives no warning when you are wasting it. It simply slips away, drop by drop, until one day you look back and realize something important was lost. But when rightly used, time is not just something that passes. It becomes the very substance with which you shape a life that is meaningful, steady, and worth living. 4. Act quietly. Let results speak. In an increasingly noisy world, where people constantly broadcast their goals, plans, and ambitions on social media, silence, especially the silence of focused action, has become a rare luxury. Not everyone possesses the strength to quietly pursue what they believe in without seeking validation or applause. Yet that is precisely how many of history's greatest minds lived, worked, and left behind timeless legacies. Stoicism encourages us to focus on action rather than words. For words, no matter how powerful or inspiring, can never substitute for real effort. When we speak too much about our goals or unrealized plans, we often experience premature satisfaction. The brain receives a temporary dopamine reward, making us feel as though we've achieved something, even though nothing has actually been done. Sharing a goal can, in some cases, create healthy pressure. But for most, it leads to delay. An idea not yet anchored in action becomes fragile when exposed to public scrutiny. Human nature craves recognition, and when recognition comes too early, simply from sharing, our drive to act can begin to erode. Stoic philosophers emphasize that self-accountability outweighs any external praise. Rather than seek admiration from others, they urged us to ask ourselves each day, am I living true to my ideals? Marcus Aurelius wrote of treating each day as if it were your last, not to incite fear, but to inspire a conscious action. That action needs no celebration, only completion. A classic example is Leonardo da Vinci and his masterpiece, the Mona Lisa. He spent years refining each detail in silence. No boasting, no process updates, no rush to reveal. When the painting was finished, it spoke for itself. No explanation, no gimmicks, just quality, depth, and the quiet persistence that defines lasting value. Stoicism teaches that what matters is not what you say you'll do, but what you've actually done and how consistently you repeat it, even when no one is watching. Silent perseverance is a clear mark of inner strength. Anyone can act when cheered on, but only the steadfast continue when unnoticed, unsupported, and uncelebrated. A powerful Stoic practice to examine oneself daily is the mirror test. At the end of each day, face yourself and ask, did I truly make progress today? This question doesn't demand dramatic wins or instant results. It seeks consistency of effort. Because true growth is born from small, repeated actions, often invisible to others. To live quietly also means to reject showmanship. In a world where every achievement can be turned into content, choosing silence becomes a form of strength. When you no longer need to share, you free yourself from dependence on feedback. When you stop expecting recognition, you can give your full energy to the work itself. That sharpens focus and shields you from unnecessary expectations. Celebrating quietly is another Stoic principle. When you reach a milestone, rather than announce it loudly, take time to appreciate the journey. No party needed, no acknowledgement required, just internal satisfaction. For true success lies not in how others see you, but in how you see yourself when no one else is looking. Nothing of real value is built overnight. Every enduring creation is formed through perseverance, brick by silent brick, day after day. That kind of resolve doesn't need applause. It needs only one thing: action. When you learn to work in silence, you simultaneously train your focus, your discipline, and your inner strength. The results will come, and when they do, they'll stand strong, needing no defense. The outcome will speak for itself, and by then, words will be unnecessary. 5. Choose an environment that nourishes you. No one exists in isolation like an island. No matter how strong-willed we may be, every person is directly influenced by their environment. What we hear, see, read, and the people we interact with daily. All of these quietly, yet constantly, shape the way we think, act, and define our values. Stoicism is keenly aware of this. Seneca once said, "We become like those we associate with." This brief statement holds a foundational truth. We are a product of both our inner nature and external influence. If the environment is positive, fostering discipline, growth, and resilience, we are more likely to become better versions of ourselves. But if Surrounded by negativity, stagnation, and chaos, even the strongest internal foundation will eventually erode. In reality, many people don't realize that their current environment is silently hindering their growth. It might be a judgmental community, a circle of friends who habitually dwell in negativity, or simply a daily habit of consuming toxic information. This psychological contamination doesn't show up as direct conflict, but seeps in slowly through conversations, comments, and the repetitive content we take in. Environment includes the physical space as well. A cluttered, noisy, poorly lit, or disorganized living or working space affects concentration, clarity, and peace of mind. In contrast, a tediously minimalist and intentional space supports clearer thought and purposeful action. Stoicism calls for the deliberate choosing of one's environment. When we can't immediately change where we live or work, the Stoic practitioner begins with what is within their control. That might mean limiting time on toxic social media, curating the content we consume, or spending more time in quiet, inspiring spaces. In relationships, Stoicism advocates discernment. Not everyone deserves your time and energy. Relationships that cause self-doubt, pull you away from discipline, or force you to shrink to be accepted are worth reevaluating. On the other hand, those who inspire, encourage action, and honor authenticity serve as positive fuel on your path of growth. If you don't yet have an ideal community in the physical world, the Stoic path can begin with building a mental environment through books, podcasts, educational materials, and deep content. Mentors and companions don't always need to be present in the flesh. They may be found in the pages of a book, a lecture video, or the words recorded thousands of years ago. Actively choosing what influences you, rather than passively absorbing, becomes a vital part of cultivating an environment that nurtures you. Another key factor is alignment between your environment and your values. If one seeks mindfulness, discipline, and intellectual development, but constantly lives in a space that encourages distraction, unconscious consumption, and shallow competition, then an inner conflict is inevitable. The tension between internal intent and external case, if prolonged, weakens willpower, undermines belief, and drains motivation. Choosing the right environment isn't a one-time act. It's a continuous process. Each day, we are given the chance to assess, eliminate, or introduce elements that support our growth. That could mean stepping away from a friend group that no longer aligns, reorganizing your space to reduce mental noise, or simply devoting more time to activities that nourish the spirit. Stoicism doesn't deny the existence of toxic environments. In fact, Stoic philosophers lived through harsh conditions, war, slavery, loss, political turmoil. Yet instead of surrendering their fate to circumstance, they chose to shape their inner world and actively sought or created spaces that supported their evolution. Choosing your environment isn't merely self-protection. It is a declaration of your values. When you refuse to waste energy on what is unworthy, you affirm that your time, attention, and inner life are precious and worthy of defending at all costs. 6. Mental decluttering. Taking out the inner trash. Just as a desk cluttered with disordered papers hinders work efficiency, a mind overloaded with unnecessary information, emotions, and thoughts loses clarity and the ability to act with precision. Stoicism recognizes this deeply. The mind must be organized just like any physical space. Only when the mind is tidy and lucid can we live a focused and effective life. In modern life, we consume more information in a single day than people once absorbed over decades. Social media, news, words from others, advertisements, images, sounds, they all flood into the mind uninvited. Not all of it is toxic, but the sheer volume and unrelenting flow cause mental overload. If not filtered, this input accumulates into fragments of mental garbage, blocking deep thought and weakening decision-making. Beyond external noise, the mind is often filled with unnecessary worries, imagined worst-case scenarios, or lingering guilt over past events. Many people carry too many open projects in their heads, unfinished tasks, unresolved relationships, unmet expectations. This creates a constant state of psychological clutter and unease. To address this, Stoic philosophers recommended regular decluttering, a conscious reordering of the mind. One practical tool from their teachings is the 3-layer filter, a set of questions to quickly evaluate whether a thought or piece of information deserves a place in your mind. The first question: does this directly affect me? Many spend hours thinking about things that have no real bearing on their lives. Other people's affairs, political drama, global events in which they play no part. If something does not directly impact you, allowing it to occupy your mental space is a waste of energy. The second question: is there anything I can do about it? This is the core of Stoic thinking, distinguishing between what we can control and what we cannot. If a situation lies outside our control, like the weather, others' reactions, or sudden external changes, the wise response is to release it, not ruminate on it. Holding on to the uncontrollable only adds unnecessary stress. The third question: is it truly important? Many things seem urgent in the moment, but from a long-term perspective, they shrink in significance. The ability to discern what truly matters helps lighten the mind. An offensive remark, a minor mistake at work, or an awkward situation, all can become insignificant if we learn to see them in proper proportion. Consistently applying these 3 questions helps build the habit of mental self-cleansing. Each time the mind begins to spiral into chaos or overload, pausing to ask what you are thinking and whether that thought is worth keeping is a vital step toward self-mastery. Mental decluttering is not about avoiding reality or suppressing emotion. It is a deliberate act to protect the clarity of the inner world, ensuring that our mental energy is invested only in what is truly worthy. When the mind is clean, focus sharpens, decisions become clearer, and life grows quieter and more deliberate. 7. Not everything deserves your energy. Mental energy is a finite resource. Like time, once spent, it cannot be immediately restored. Yet in daily life, people often let trivial matters, careless words, or needless conflicts consume their attention and emotions. They react to everything, every person, every situation, as if all of it deserved their response. But the truth is, it doesn't. Stoicism emphasizes this. It is not events or others that harm us, but our reaction to them. Every time we grow angry, irritated, or overreact to something insignificant, we are choosing to trade our inner peace for a fleeting outburst. But we always have another option: to not react, or to respond with calm and clarity. A story that vividly illustrates this principle is that of the old man insulted on the street. When a stranger hurled abuse at him, he simply smiled and walked away. When asked why he didn't respond, he replied, "If someone tries to give me a gift and I don't accept it, the gift still belongs to them." Insults work the same way. If you don't take them in, they cannot harm you. This story embodies a central Stoic idea. We choose our responses, and every response consumes some portion of our mental energy. If we constantly react to every negative stimulus, we will quickly burn out. That's why learning to discern what truly deserves our reaction and attention is not just a skill. It is a form of inner self-preservation. In reality, many people spend hours arguing on social media, replying to negative comments, or carrying frustration from a brief exchange throughout their entire day. Each time, a piece of clarity and peace is chipped away. These things, upon closer inspection, rarely bring long-term value and often have no real effect on their actual lives. They are emotional traps, places where energy is drained without a worthy return. Stoicism does not encourage apathy. It encourages discernment. It's not that nothing matters, but that not everything matters to you. In this moment, in this context, this philosophy honors the power of discrimination, a capacity that only develops when we pause, look inward, and ask the right questions at the right time. One simple but effective practice is to pause before reacting. When something provokes you, a rude comment, a critical remark, a disrespectful gesture, pause. Count to 30. Breathe deeply. Ask yourself, is this worth my energy? Will this affect my life in the long run? Can I control this? Just a few seconds of stillness creates a gap, a space between the external trigger and the internal response. In that space, self-mastery is restored. It's the point where you stop acting on impulse and begin choosing with awareness. And in such moments, you are living stoically, letting reason govern emotion, using inner order to meet outer chaos. No one can fully control what happens to them, but everyone can control what is worthy of their reaction. And in a world as turbulent as ours, protecting your mental energy isn't selfish, it's essential. Not to withdraw from the world, but to meet it with the calm, clarity, and strength it truly demands. 8. Embracing solitude as a privilege. In modern society, solitude is often misunderstood as something negative. Many people fear being alone, fear silence, and constantly seek to fill that space with noise, interaction, or endless consumption. Yet through the lens of Stoicism, solitude is not a sign of lack, but a form of privilege, an opportunity to reconnect with oneself in a world full of distractions. The ancient Stoic philosophers, from Epictetus to Marcus Aurelius, all made time for deliberate isolation. These were moments removed from the noise of society, not to escape, but to reflect, to examine the self, and to fortify inner strength. In solitude, we are no longer shaped by the gaze or expectations of others. The mind becomes more honest, for there is no one to perform for, no one to please. In silence, deeper thoughts begin to surface. The Stoic practitioner uses solitude as a mirror to re-examine actions, recalibrate thinking, and realign direction. When the external noise fades, we start to hear the small but essential voice within. What truly matters? What must continue? and what should be released. Solitude is also a space where one trains self-reliance. When a person cannot sit still without reaching for a phone, turning on music, or seeking distraction, it reveals a dependence on external stimulation. In contrast, when someone can remain in silence without feeling empty, it reflects a mind that has been trained. Stoicism honors this state, where a person needs nothing outside themselves to feel whole. Many great figures in history, not only philosophers but scientists, artists, and leaders, spent part of their lives in solitude to create, to think, and to cultivate inner power. Nikola Tesla is a notable example. He spent years alone in his laboratory, not to avoid society, but because he understood the value of undisturbed focus and freedom from distraction. To practice solitude in the Stoic spirit does not require retreating to the mountains or cutting ties with the world. It simply means setting aside time each day away from technology, crowds, and stimulation. It could be a morning without a phone, an evening with all devices off, or a silent weekend where it's just you and your thoughts. In these moments, the Stoic might journal, read philosophy, or simply sit in stillness and observe the stream of thought passing through. The goal is not to control the mind, but to understand it better, and from that understanding, to act more deliberately in daily life. Solitude does not make a person weak. On the contrary, it is where inner strength is nourished. When you no longer rely on the external world to define your worth, you become more resilient in the face of adversity. And when you've trained yourself to be alone and still feel whole, no circumstance can truly throw you off course. 9. Train the mind as you would a muscle. The human mind, like a muscle, cannot maintain strength without consistent training. Stoicism regards the mind as the command center of all actions, decisions, and emotions, the core that must be forged if one is to attain self-mastery, tranquility, and resilience in life. A fragile, easily shaken mind leads to impulsive reactions, inconsistency, and a sense of helplessness in the face of adversity. In Stoic philosophy, the mind is not an abstract notion, but a faculty that can be trained through discipline and regular practice. Just as the body requires movement to build strength, the mind must be intentionally placed in situations that train focus, control, and clarity. This process does not require special conditions. It begins with small habits integrated into daily life. One emphasized method is the daily repetition of an internal mantra. Stoic philosophers often used brief sayings to remind themselves of what truly matters. For example, I cannot control everything, but I can control my response. These are not words of comfort, but tools to reset perception and help maintain composure when faced with forces beyond one's control. Another practice is concentrating on a single task for an extended period, a form of training against distraction. In a modern world where attention is pulled by notifications, social media, and rapid streams of information, the ability to stay focused has become rare. Stoicism recommends strengthening this capacity by selecting a specific task and engaging with it during a fixed time window without allowing distraction. This is how mental endurance is built. Much like lifting weights strengthens the body. Another essential principle in mental training is the deliberate pause before responding. When faced with an invitation, a demand, or a criticism, instead of reacting instantly, the Stoic practitioner is encouraged to pause, reflect, and consider. This pause not only prevents impulsive reactions, but also cultivates self-mastery in the face of emotion. It is this form of mental strength that Stoic philosophers consider the foundation of inner freedom. Training the mind does not occur under perfect conditions. It often begins in the most ordinary moments. While waiting, after a rejection, in moments of discomfort, or when facing difficult choices. Each of these situations is an opportunity for practice, not by suppressing emotion, but by observing it, analyzing it, and directing it with reason. Stoicism does not aim to eliminate emotion altogether, but to reach a mental state strong enough not to be swept away by passing feelings. Just as the body cannot become strong from a single workout, the mind must be continuously trained to become unshakable in any circumstance. 10. Just begin and persist. One of the most common human obstacles is procrastination. Many people nurture grand ideas, dreams, and goals in their minds, but never take the first step. They wait for the perfect conditions, for inspiration to strike, or for absolute certainty of success, he says. Yet according to Stoicism, it is action, not prolonged thought, that sets things in motion. Stoic philosophy views beginning, however small or imperfect, as the first step toward transformation. There is no path to inner growth that bypasses concrete action. Positive thoughts and noble ideals mean nothing without practice. Marcus Aurelius once stressed, "Don't waste time talking about what a good person is. Be one." Action is the clearest proof of one's commitment to a life of principle. Starting does not require perfection. In fact, the desire to do everything perfectly from the beginning is simply procrastination in disguise. Many hesitate to start out of fear of failure, of judgment, or of falling short of expectations. But Stoicism teaches that failure is not an enemy. It is an essential part of learning and growth. Even missteps provide experience, and it is persistence, not a flawless beginning, that determines success. Alongside starting, consistency is indispensable. Any action, if not sustained, will soon fade. Stoic practice encourages habit building through small, repeated steps. Repetition is not monotony, it is the foundation of character. A positive behavior, maintained long enough, becomes a part of who you are. Stoicism does not demand dramatic leaps in short time frames. It values small but steady progress. One step forward each day, one right act each morning, one self-reflection each night. This process, sustained over time, brings about lasting transformation, not from the outside, but from within. Ultimately, quiet, consistent action is the essence of this teaching. No announcement needed, no boasting, no need for recognition. When action is rooted in self-awareness and guided by a clear purpose, the results will speak at the right time, in the clearest way. When I first encountered Stoicism, I thought it was a philosophy suited only for those who liked to ponder or lived apart from society. But the more I practiced, the more I realized Stoicism is not a theory to be memorized, but a tool to face daily life. A life filled with pressure, emotion, and uncontrollable situations. I started with the smallest things. Each morning, before touching my phone, I spend a few minutes breathing deeply and asking myself, what do I truly want today? What is the most important task? This helps me avoid being swept away by things that are urgent but not essential. Throughout the day, when faced with criticism or unexpected delays, I try to pause for a few seconds to avoid reacting emotionally. I don't always succeed, but each time I do, I feel stronger. I also make time to be alone, disconnecting from the internet, journaling, thinking without needing outside validation. That's when I can clearly see where I'm headed and why every small act, repeated over time, has gradually helped me live more mindfully, avoid chasing empty distractions, and most importantly, not lose myself in the chaos of modern life. If you found this content helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you won't miss future videos on Stoicism and the journey of inner strength. And always remember, true success isn't about being seen. It's about being strong enough not to need to be. See you in the next video.